they mention a person,
Which we had all that on it. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
and they mention a place,
Mm-hmm.
and they mention a statement, then you know it's a thing. Is
Okay.
that safe to say?
Yes, because what did you just do? Okay, if they mention a place and a statement, okay, the place didn't make the statement,
Mhm.
but these are two variables of that equation. So now, you know, if they can find the place and they can identify the statement, there's a person there somewhere in the place that made the statement. That's your that's the variable that's in the equation. So then what the auditor's doing the same thing on a mental level that a mathematician is doing on a level of an equation. Every aberration is based on variables in an equation. If you look at it from a mathematical standpoint, if you look at mathematics as a demo kit, an aberrated person is an individual that has equations, but they don't know the computation. So there's so when if I gave you the answer, if I gave you a formula, and based on the information you input, let's say we're dealing with the circumference, right? A circumference formula. And if you input for the radius, okay, so we know that the equation is circumference equals pi times d, correct? You with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And now we know the circumference of the planet Earth is 24,896 miles. If you input a number and you get 30,000 miles, then you already know there's either a problem with the equation or there's a problem with the numbers that you're inputting. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
An aberrated mind works the same way. There's incorrect data that's being placed into the equation and it's constantly getting the wrong answer. And that's why people are aberrated.
So going back to what you said about the person, place, thing, statement. Okay, so you said that if they mention a person, if they mention a place and they mention a statement, then you automatically know that you're looking for a person. And that's because things don't make statements.
You're always looking for a person.
Okay.
You're always
Okay,
looking
so
at the root of the engram is at the root of an engram is a moment of unconsciousness that was caused by what? Some type of pain. And there was a circuit. But the circuit had to come from where?
Something someone said.
It has to come from a person. There's no mystery God.
Right. Right.
And there's no mystery devil either.
So when you said look for a person, place, thing, or statement.
Right. When you have an occluded case, when I say occluded case, that means it's hard for you to get anything. You ask a person to go back and they can't find anything. Okay. So when you go through your procedure guide, you're really trying to hunt down any perceptic you can find. And there's a part in your procedure guide that might say, you ask the person, listen, do you hear something? Do you see something? And the person might say, I hear birds. Okay, so now, boom. And then so you got one piece of the puzzle, birds. Okay, you might say, do you see the birds? Where are the birds located? And it might happen, they might say, oh, okay, I see them I'm in the park. Now what just happened? You're getting more attention units. You're getting more attention units. And you have to be, as an auditor, you have to be like a mathematician that's trying to get as many variables as you can to solve this equation. And at the root of it is you're looking for a person, you're looking for a statement in a person, basically. Because it's those are the two things that are keeping us, it's that whispering of the slinking devil, correct?
Okay, so
Yeah.
then just, and I guess because looking at the formula that you gave for
Mhm.
percentages,
Mhm.
the 100 was always a given in the formula.
Mhm.
So in this instance, could you say, if it's an occluded case,
Mhm.
that the thing is the what's always the given?
In an occluded case, you may have to figure out all the variables. The only thing that you know for sure is that there's something wrong. And you know that the root is a person and a statement.
So the root is always a person and a state.
Basically. Because if you track down any engram, the three things that you always find: a moment of unconsciousness that was caused by some type of injury, and there's a statement. That's your circuit. But the circuit had to come from a person. So if you look at an engram as a collection of variables, then as an auditor, as a mental mathematician, what we're looking to do is we want to gather as much data as we can to figure out the variables so we can solve for the unknown.
So is there ever a case when you're going after an engram where it doesn't resolve to a person or a state?
Never. It's always a person.
If you look at the root of the engram, the root of the engram is a circuit, because it's really the circuit that this allows us. One of the things that L. Ron Hubbard states is that it is the inability to control our facsimiles, meaning we have thoughts that intrude on our rational thinking. And these are the thoughts that cause us to say and do certain things. But those thoughts are circuits, and those circuits came from a person. So at the root of our aberrated behavior, there has to be a person that made a statement, and there's a location.
Okay, if we take this on another level, just
Okay.
briefly, if we look at the original engram, if we go all the way back to the very, very beginning of the creation of God's creation of himself,
Mm-hmm.
and if that's where the wobble in the motion, or in any wobble in our motion, could eventually go back to that original engram,
Oh, that's above my pay grade.
then where's the person there or that made the statement?
That I can't even, I'm not even qualified to answer that one. I know for the individual, for many of us, the statements could have been produced based on things we heard. And I think this is a question that you asked about 2 weeks ago, something we heard while we were in the womb still.
In utero. Mhm.
Utero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not qualified to talk about that first God. That's a whole nother that's a whole nother thing there. But when you look at individuals, some of the things that we wrestle with are, and see, and here's the problem with people understanding how the tech works. A person thinks that what causes them the most mental problems are the things they remember, and that's not how it works. What causes us the most aberration is we suffer from something that is going on within us, and we don't know what in the world
For
it is,
what it is.
but
That's
we just
true.
know something's not right.
Right.
Mhm.
Or we don't know how to figure it out. We don't know how to solve for X.
How can you?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
okay, so here's the question. If I
Because you
ask
don't
you,
have the, sorry, but you don't have the the things to plug into the formula in
Right.
order to solve it. Yeah,
Right.
you
So,
don't know
so
what those
Sistani, if
things
I
are.
said, okay, what is the derivative? What is the derivative of 3x squared?
Okay, you lost me when you said derivative.
Right. And if I showed you the formula, you'd be able to figure it out with no problem.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's the only reason why I'm saying that. There's a formula. And the formula is a step-by-step process. If I showed you the formula, I could show you how to figure out a derivative, take about 10 minutes to do it. But if you don't have the formula,
Mhm.
if you don't have all the variables necessary to go through your cycle of actions, start, change, stop. So as an aberrated person, we have the given, we know we're crazy. We don't know the equation. We don't know all of the variables that's causing our aberration. So if we don't know all the variables, how can we solve the problem?
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Again, anytime you have an equation, let's go back. I'm going to use math as a demo kit again. Okay, watch this. Let's clear this and let's. Can everyone see the whiteboard here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anytime you have an equation, if I say, so let's have an equation that has 3 parts to it. So if I say 3x plus 2, let's see, equals, okay. In solving this really has 3 parts to the equation, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You have 1, 2, 3, and this unknown makes 4, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so whenever you have 4 parts, you have to have at least 3 in order to solve it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, because Sister Anya, can you solve this one for me? What's the first thing you do with this equation?
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of the 2. So that's 3x equals 18.
Okay, so so let me do this so that we all follow. Whatever you do to one side, you do to another. Now watch this. Use this as a demo kit. If one side is the mind, the other side is the body, whatever you do to the mind, isn't that going to affect the body?
Yes.
What you do to the body, isn't it going to affect the mind?
Yes.
Okay, so the same concept. We're using mathematics, understand the tech. So now you get 3x equals what, Sister Anya?
18.
Okay, 18. So what you just applied is called the addition property of equation. And I abbreviate it as addition property of equation, APE. So you just applied what's considered to be another law. Here's another law or another rule you have to understand. Okay, now what do you do?
So now we're going to apply the division principle of equation.
Well, it falls. No, you're absolutely right. It's called the multiplication property of equation.
Oh,
Remember,
multiplication.
multiplication and division are inverses, right?
Okay.
Right.
So we can just call it I remember as MPE, but that includes division. But if you want to call it the division property of equation, that works too. And then you do what?
Okay, so I'm going to do divide by 3 on that side and divide by 3 on the other side.
Okay, and so then X equals what?
X equals 6.
Okay,
Okay.
and then the final step is you take this number, you input it. So 3 times 6 is what?
18.
18 plus 2 is,
20.
and then 20 equals 20, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now watch this. I'm gonna give you one to solve, Sister Anya, and I want you to, now I'm gonna give you something to solve, and I want you to be mindful of all the thoughts, what takes place in your mind, and the emotion when I give this to you.
All right.
Okay, be aware of what happens. Okay, I want you to solve that, Sister Anya. Be aware of everything that goes through your mind right now. 4x plus y equals 30. Talk me through what's going through your mind right now.
Right, 4x plus y equals 30. So let's see, I've got 2 unknowns.
What emotion are you feeling right now?
Well, I went into analytical mode,
Okay.
and plus I'm trying to remember the formulas for this. And I'm pushing things around in my mind to see what works that's going to give me a breakthrough to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. Have you come to any realization yet?
That I need more data.
Exactly, you need more data. But now, if we kept at it, wouldn't this cause you to become frustrated? If I said,
I guess it would eventually, but
yeah,
it would take a little while, because I would say to myself, there's a way to work it out, and I would try every possible angle before I would give up and get frustrated and say it can't be done, because that's how I normally am.
Okay. So the point here is you have 1, you have 2, you have 3, you have 4 parts to this, but you only have these 2 data right here. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the rules are, when you have 4 parts, you need at least 3 to solve. Okay. Here you have 4 parts, you only have 2. You need additional data. So if I did just by doing this, Sister Anya, what does X equal now?
X equals 7.
See how easy that was?
Mm-hmm.
This is why the case inventory is so important, because an aberrated mind has all these unknown variables. The case inventory provides you with the bulk of the variables, the input you need to solve the person's case, unless you come across some new variables that the person might, because there's things from our past that we've just totally forgotten, correct?
Right.
Okay. But the same concepts in mathematics are the same concepts we can apply into auditing. if we look at it from the level of a mathematical theology. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
But we have to have the right amount of data, and the person is the equation. And what we're striving to do is we have to find the variables. So you might have this right here. Let's say, I'll use this as an example. Let's say 2p. Now just bear with me for a minute. There's a method to my madness. Plus L plus C equals 40, okay? This P could represent the person. This is the location. This C could represent circuit, okay? So you have an occluded case, you have an equation like this, and you have all variables and no stable data. Does that make sense? You with me? Cisania?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Could you say that again, please?
Okay, look at that equation.
Mhm.
And the P represents person, L represents location, C represents a circuit, okay? So now, in an occluded case, you have this madness. If I can figure out the circuit and the location, then I can begin to solve this problem, right? If I got the circuit and the location, can I figure out the person?
Yeah, because you would ask for them to tell you what they see or what they hear. You'd go through those other perceptics.
Right.
And by them identifying the perceptics, then all of a sudden they realize who it is.
Who it is.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can identify the person and the location, can I figure out the circuit?
The location and the person.
No, if I have the person and I have a statement, can I figure out a location?
I would say yes.
Yeah, because you can say, okay, where were they standing when they said this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what did you just do? You got your location. So now you have the person location. So now what you have all the perceptics, and now what happens to them? They say, oh, wait a minute. It was Aunt so-and-so. Oh, yeah, she was standing in the kitchen. She was by the stove and she said X, Y, and Z. What did you just do? You figured out the variables to solve the equation.
Mm-hmm. And you could ask them in what manner were they speaking? Were they speaking in a loud tone or low tone? And then they might remember that the person was shouting when they made the statement or something like that.
Exactly. So now if you look at it as a mathematician, if the engram is based on a moment of unconsciousness that was the result of an injury, and if there's a circuit, there has to be a person, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when we're auditing, if we look at it from a mathematical standpoint, what we're looking to do is we're looking to figure out what variables do I need to solve this case.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to take whatever data the file clerk will give you, and then base whatever the file clerk gives you, that the file clerk is giving you data that you can use to input into the equation. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. And that brought me back to little cognition, or just I remembered when you're doing math problems in school, they would give you problems like 4x plus y equals 30. But then there would be another statement and they'd say where y equals 2.
They have to give you that other one. Otherwise, you can't
Right.
figure it out.
And then once you plug that in, then you can solve it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So for example, if you have a list of, if you have your case inventory and you have a list of people, and then let's say in your case inventory, there was one person that had an impact on you during a certain period. Let's say you're in high school between, I'm just gonna off the top of my head, from 1980 to 1984. Okay, so that's a time period. So you already know if it's during this time period, there are certain people that couldn't be the solution to any problem that came up between those two, that time period, because these people might have passed away before 1980, or you didn't meet these people until after 1984. So you already know, if you do your case inventory, if I have a problem between this year and this year, you already know through elimination, it can't be that person, that person, that person. So then it has to be this person, this person, and this person. You get a chance to narrow down what you can plug in to solve that problem, correct?
Yes, sir.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the point is, the more we understand the math can be used as a demo kit that will show us the dynamics of how to audit. We're looking at an individual as if they are I don't want to use the word problem, but you're looking at them as an equation that needs to be solved. And then you have to input certain data. And then when they had that aha moment, what that individual just did was they placed the last variable in the equation. And now this equals this. And then that's when they say, oh my God, all those years, I thought it was such and such, so-and-so, and then what happens? You get them to a point where they can shrug it off and laugh about it, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So what
Yes.
just happened? You might have brought them from 1.0. You, of course, as you're auditing them, you're slowly bringing them up 1.1, 1.5, 2.0, get them to a point of at 2.5. And then if you can get them to input that last variable where they come to that realization, oh my God, you know what? We were driving back from the park, and it was, I remember the accident now. See, now it was the accident, and so said, boom, boom, boom. The equation has been solved. So basically, all of us here are I don't know why the word conundrum just came to mind, but we are can someone look up that word for me real quick? Look up the word conundrum. Who's got it?
Looking for it.
This is another thing that happens when you do a lot of word clearing. Sometimes words pop up sometimes. And I'm like, wait a minute, why'd that word pop up? And you look it up and like, oh, that's the perfect word. You just forgot what the word meant. Who's got it? You got it, Sister Peggy? Go ahead.
This is from my Google. Conundrum means a confusing and difficult problem or question,
Okay.
as in one of the most difficult conundrums for the experts.
Okay, that's perfect then. We are individually a conundrum of equations.
Mhm.
Our aberrated mind, on one level, mathematically, we can say boils down to the fact that we have a whole conundrum of unsolved equations.
Mm.
We are a math book full of lessons, full of data, but we have problems at the end of the chapter that we haven't solved yet.
Yeah.
And that's why we're crazy as hell.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Sister Tina.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
Well, like,
salam.
Like Sister Ania said, she had no idea this formula even existed because they didn't teach us this in school. So I want to ask you if you can give us the formulas for each area of solving a problem. Like this is for solving percentages. Can you give us the different formulas for solving different operations?
Oh, at every level, see, when you start with the bottom part, meaning arithmetic, fractions, and decimals, you're learning how numbers relate to one another. When you get to ratios, proportions, and percents, that's considered to be pre-algebra. You're stepping over the line of that's usually one of the first formulas you understand. When you start from algebra and you go above, everything is basically formula. So, and when you look at a formula, now when we did those formulas, what operations did we do to solve those equations?
arithmetic.
We just did arithmetic.
Yeah.
Arithmetic.
Okay, how many operations are there in mathematics?
4.
There's only 4. Okay. So now once you get to algebra, what you have to understand is you're going to be given data and you're going to be asked to figure out something. And then in between that cycle of action, you're given the start and you're given the stop. The equation shows you how to change, because when you look at an equation, you're inputting a number and that equation is actually transforming that number into the solution. Does that make sense?
Oh, you just reminded me of something else, Brother Lukman. Going back to the percentages.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I think when I was in school and they explained it, they were saying that there's a difference between percent and percentage. And so going back, trying to figure out where to plug it into the formula, based on the formula you gave us today, where does percent and percentage plug into that?
Based on that formula, is over of equals n over 100. Whenever you're given the percentage, you plug it into where you find the n. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because if you look at the equation, is over of, that's like the ratio, and then equal n over 100. What's on the other side of that equation is your percentage. What you're doing is you're transforming fraction language into percent language, if that makes any sense. So you just have to know where to plug the numbers in.
Okay.
But the
So
same
the
principle.
ratio side then is always your percent, and the n over 100 side is always the percentage. Is that correct?
No, what's on the right side? That's your percent. I don't understand what they mean by there's a difference between percent and percentage. To me, that's the same thing. Because if I say 1 over 9 is equal to 1 over 9 is how can I put it? 1 over 9 is equal to is what percent of 100? It's the same thing. It comes out to, it's going to be 10. It's 10%. You're still talking about percentage. So for someone to say what's the difference between percent and percentage, I don't, that doesn't flow with me. I don't follow that. What you're doing is you're giving 2 numbers and you're converting that into, so how would I say this in the language of percentage or percents? So if I say 2 over 10, I know that's 20%. Does that make sense? percent and percentage to me is really talking about the same thing. Does that make sense, Estania?
No, I guess maybe that's why I never understood it, because of the way it was explained to me in the first place.
Yeah, it boils down to that formula never changes. And when you're given a word problem, there's only but so many ways they can ask the question. And as long as you can identify which number they're giving you, then you'll always be able to figure out which number you have to figure out. And then once you plug the numbers in, all it becomes down to is cross multiplication. You're isolating your variable. And then once you input the numbers in, it becomes arithmetic. When you come with your solution, you plug that back in and you double check, make sure your answer is correct. That's why you always check your math. But to me, percent and percentages, I don't see that as being different things. I think that's the same thing.
Okay.
And again, the more you do it, the more you practice, it becomes second nature. But the main thing is understanding mathematics from the standpoint that is not just mathematics. There are lessons. Remember when Brother Batin talked about the fundamental?
Yes.
Okay. And the fundamental, he said, he was coming from the perspective of music. He was saying that you can take a musical note, and that musical note is called the fundamental, but it has other harmonics. Meaning there's other notes that you don't hear that make up that note. And if I remember correctly, he said that there's 12 other notes contained in that note. And the reason why I remember that is, so you have one note that you hear, and there's 12 notes that you don't hear. I remember that from the standpoint that Moses struck the rock and 12 springs gushed forth, correct? Y'all familiar with that ayat in the Holy Quran? Yes, no? Come on, someone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have Jesus and you have 12 disciples, yes?
Yes.
Okay, so there's something about that 1 and the 12. From the standpoint of music theory, you have the one note, but you have 12, I think they call them harmonics. When you study, and what I'm learning now is, whenever I study any subject, the goal is I want to understand the concept, the basic concept, but now I'm looking for 12 other ways that I can understand that concept. And it just so happens that when you look at math from the standpoint of an equation, as we're showing, you can apply the same principle to auditing. Does that make sense? So that now we're not just haphazardly taking someone through a session. We're looking for we have specific objectives that we're looking for when we're taking someone back on their time track. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if we apply the same principle to ourselves, that means, or could mean, if we could take the time, self-improvement, the basis for community development, from the standpoint of the teachings, if we look at self-analysis from the standpoint of the tech, we can use these tools to find out the equations within ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How many of us have looked through that book, Self-Analysis?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you go through self-analysis, when you go through those lists, there might be something that says, let's go through a list real quick. Okay, a random list. Okay, I just opened up the valences. Okay. One of the things on this might say, you notice somebody wearing something you wore. Okay. What is he actually doing when he gives us these lists to go over? He's trying to bring us back on a time track to find data that's part of an equation. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and by going through these lists, there's a possibility we could have the last variable to an equation that would cause us to solve something within ourselves. And then we would no longer be a conundrum. That's the word for today, conundrum.
Conundrum.
Conundrum, that's the word for today. We are a collection of unsolved equations. And this is why we become aberrated. Certain people, certain statements, certain environments cause a restimulation because it's inputting incorrect data that's producing an incorrect answer. And that's why we're loco. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It
makes complete sense.
There's some hidden variables somewhere. So the numbers are being inputted, but we're not getting the right response. It's not because
That's like,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry. I was saying, to me, that's like the held down 7.
That's exactly what it is, Sister Milani.
That's
It's
the
held
held
down
down
7.
seven.
There's something there that's messing up the computation, and we can't figure it out. It's a hidden variable. But once we have the whole equation, remember, on an auditing level, what is the equation? Moment of unconsciousness caused by an injury. You have a person, you have a statement, and you have a location. These are the basic variables. So when we're asking someone, what do you see? What do you hear? Look, listen, what do you hear? We're trying to gather perceptics because the perceptics are going to lead us to what? The perceptics will lead us to these variables that will allow us to solve the problem, solve the equation. And then once we pop that last variable in there and the pre-clear says, oh my God, X, Y, and Z, the equation has been solved, correct?
Yes.
And then when we bring them back to present time and we say, okay, go over everything that we have covered today, and they X, Y, Z, and we talked about this, and boom, boom, boom. And you see the tone level is up. What has just happened? That's one less equation that person's going to carry around now that's going to cause them to become aberrated because they already know. I've been doing that this whole time because of this. Okay. Go ahead, Sister Anya.
I just went through a whole issue right there because after you said what you said about this, you didn't really understand because there's not really a difference between percentage and percentages. I started unraveling and just coming down the tone scale. I was going back and forth between the two main math teachers that I had. The one that always was very supportive and helpful and encouraging to me, and the other one that always was the exact opposite of that. And I could feel myself recoiling. I could feel myself shrinking. I could feel all of my feelings of lack of self-confidence was just rising up, swallowing me up, just towering over me. And then I saw myself sitting in the classroom. It was if, and it went back to, it wasn't just like one statement, it was just a barrage of statements of that math teacher that was not supportive. And so I think that the trigger there was me sitting in class, asking a question about percentages that I didn't understand, and him getting on his high horse again, and he was a tall man. So he was like him towering over me and ridiculing me in front of the whole class as to why I couldn't keep up and why everybody else understood it and I didn't. And so I never really got an understanding, because every time it came up, I never asked the question again. So I never really got to understand percentages. And so even though you gave us a formula today, which made it very, very clear and made it so simple. So I guess the statement, it revolves of my misunderstanding as it revolved around that being belittled when I asked a question, because I didn't understand when he was using the terms percent and percentages, and I was asking for clarification. And so I never got a clear clarification of what it, when to use one and when to use the other. And so it's always been stuck there. That's led to me always having a problem when it came to doing percentages in when it came to doing math. So it just, I noticed it because after you stated what you said about you didn't really understand it because there really is no difference. And then I started going through all of those, but I could feel tears welling up, and I could feel myself feeling small, belittled. And it's not you didn't belittle me. But because we have this tech, and because we're, as the auditor, not only we're able to do that analysis because we understand how the tech works. I could feel myself going through all of those motions, and I knew something was wrong. And then everything, you asked a question, and it's like, okay, whatever it was, whatever the question is, it's not computing, because I realized I didn't hear anything. I could feel myself. I knew you were talking because you were going to talk about something else, but I couldn't tell you now what it was you said, because everything else after that became a blur, because I was stuck back in that classroom being belittled.
So that would be considered what, sonic shutoff?
Is that what it's called?
We could say sonic shutoff. Some would say that husbands do it all the time with their wives.
Well, head, close your ears.
It happens. Like, you don't remember me telling you let me tell you something. If you ask me a question while I'm watching a movie or if I'm playing chess, it's out in the ether somewhere. I didn't even, there's a sonic shut off there, But the same thing happens, Sister Ania. You ever see it in the movies where someone's saying something and the person, they're looking at something and all of a sudden you see the thing zooms in on what they're looking at and they come back and they're like, wait a minute, what did you just say? That's real.
Mhm.
That's real.
Yes.
But now the thing is this, irregardless of what he said, weren't you just doing percentages about 30 minutes ago?
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Yes.
But now here's the thing. Find a system that can take you through that so you can get the remainder of that off. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Get that processed so that that can be removed. Because a year from now, we want you to be able to do, extracting derivatives and solving differential equations and whatnot.
Yes, sir.
Because we're being made to move into the circle of gods.
Yes, sir.
And part
Yes,
of
sir.
that is that, but here's the thing. I don't think that's a coincidence that, because if I ask everyone here that if everyone here can come up with just one or two incidents of something that took place in the classroom, I think everyone here could come up with at least one. And I think that's by design. And I think that's why the tech is so important.
Yes, yes.
To become a god means we have to understand the language of formulae, correct? As the minister
Yes.
has shared with us.
Mm.
And I think the enemy knows that. If they know, let's go back in history for a split second. Didn't the Savior meet with the president
Mhm.
back at that time period? Do you remember which president that was? Was it let's see, that would have had to have been between,
Was it a Roosevelt?
I can't remember.
So that's definitive because I've always heard that to be conjecture.
Well, I've heard I've heard the minister teach on it. Has anyone ever heard the minister teach on that? Has anyone ever heard the minister teach on that the Savior actually met with one of the presidents? I believe I remember the minister saying it, and I believe I remember reading it.
Okay.
So my thought is, if the Savior, and if the minister said it, then that's gospel, that's stable datum.
Right.
And if the governments know who the Savior is and know that he's a scientist, then to me, that would mean that in order for the government to try to prevent the Savior's work from being manifested, that means the government would have to remove from the equation a people who are a people of high civilization and high mathematics and high science. Does that make sense?
Yes.
How do you remove them from the equation? You give them mathematical and scientific engrams. You make them afraid of the very thing that would allow them to go back amongst their own people who are of higher mathematics and high science.
Wow.
This is why the educational system is the way it is. It's designed to keep, why does the devil keep our people illiterate? So he can use them for a tool and also a slave. He keeps them blind to themselves so he can master them. Well,
exactly.
Are the teachers that some of us had in the classroom were there by design. Some of us were fortunate enough to come across some teachers that were just, it's crazy. And this, I'm not trying to take anything away from Sister Ania, what you're saying is, I'm trying to say that this was by design, that you're not the only one that this happened to. But I also would like to more processing to take place to remove more of that's there. Does that make sense, Sister Ania?
Say that again.
My goal is, my focus is for you to continue down that road, find a sister who can go through the processing to continue to remove that, because I think that something was just brought to the surface, but I think it's not removed. Does that make sense?
I know it's not, because I'm having a problem now concentrating on what you're saying, and I keep, having to come back.
Mhm.
Okay, what was it you just said? And I know I'm not listening intently like I was before that happened.
So so Sister Anya, we need you in present time, or at least we want to make sure that we connect you with someone that can process that out. But the point is, this is by design. There's no doubt in my mind, this is by design. Sister Tina, go ahead and ask your question. I'm gonna put something else out here and then we're gonna keep it moving. Go ahead, Sister Tina.
I just wanted to ask something in regards to what Sister Ania just said. When she said what she said about her teacher telling her percentage and percent is different, she said that's where she would get stuck. So, and when she kept asking him, he would not answer her. And so by you saying you never heard that before, and you're an excellent teacher of math. So I'm thinking that was a held down 7. He just gave her some wrong information.
It could be.
Because he couldn't justify it. He couldn't answer her. And she was smart enough to ask him, well, what's the difference? And because there wasn't a difference, like you said, you don't never heard of a difference.
Exactly.
So that caused her to have a held down 7, wrong data. So whenever percentages came up for her to do the problem, solve the problem, she was stuck because she was given wrong data. So is that correct, Brother Lukman?
You know what? What you just said makes total sense, and I'll tell you why. If you're given 2 different word problems, and in one word problem you have the word percent, and the other word problem you have the word percentage, and percentage are 2 different things, how do you solve that?
Right.
And that's what was going on, is whenever I would see that, I'm trying to figure out where to plug in the data based on thinking that percent and percentages are 2 different things.
Yeah, so he was the dummy, not
Just remember, in that equation, is over of equals n over 100. And Sister Anya, if you would like, and I'll invite anyone to this as well, I'll do a class where we will just focus specifically on these word problems and go over them and use it as a type of processing. We'll do what's called percentage processing. We'll do percentage processing, and I can guarantee you, by the time we get done, there will be no question as to what is what. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. And I, in a previous class, maybe a year or 2 ago, we dealt with the subject of word problems. And I dare say that that's why we have not really delved into our lessons the way we should have, because they're presented to us as word problems to be solved.
Okay.
And most of us probably have engrams around word problems.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. That's my assignment.
And that could be why Master Fard Muhammad gave them to us in that manner in the first place.
Yes, ma'am. What'd you say, Sister Shireen? You hyperventilate when?
I literally start breathing deeply, and just to read them is a whole event with me. And I was a strong reader, but as soon as I start reading those problems, I go through changes. Yep.
Okay. So Let me ask this question. Cause see, I'm on vacation for the next month, so I got plenty of time. I got nothing but time. When would you all like to do some word problems?
Next math class.
I
Okay.
start back to work on the 14th, so.
Okay. Okay. Word problems. Because what happens is this. Now, Sister Ani, here's what I would like for you to do. Here's your homework assignment. Clear the word percent and clear the word percentage. Just to get the rest of that out of the system. Okay. Because now, based on how Sister Tina just worded that, I can understand the held down 7 was based on the word percent. Okay. But if you look at it from the perspective of the equation, is over of equals n over 100. Okay. And the word problems, since you already have the 100 that's in there, that means you have to have at least 2 of the others. So you're either going to get, they're going to give you the is, they're going to give you the of, or they're going to give you the percentage.
Right, right. Which you said is the what?
So the what, no, the what is your unknown. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So
What?
if they give you the percentage, you're going to plug that into where the n is. The n that's over 100, the percentage always goes over 100. So if I say 15% of 30 is what? Is what is your unknown? Okay, so your is going to be your unknown. Your of is going to be your 30. The percent always goes over 100, so it's going to be equals 15 over 100. Does that make sense? Okay.
So that's going to be the same in other word problems too. That holds true, is that the what is always the unknown.
The what is your, because if you say something, I say what, that's unknown. That's why I ask what, because I don't know. Okay. Now, the only way they'll trip you up is they might change the language, which is why it's important to clear words, because then you understand the importance of understanding synonyms, because there's ways of trying to throw curveballs in how you word the question. And that's what causes Sister Shireen to hyperventilate. Those little curveballs they throw. But the more, you know how they tell you to clear, when you clear a word, you're supposed to use it. They suggest you using it in at least 10 sentences. When you're in the org, they catch you yawning, and they flock up to you like this, and you're like, look, if you don't just leave me alone, and they find out that there's a word that you misunderstood because you presented a symptom, they want you to clear the word and then use it in a sentence, correct?
Right.
What's the purpose of using that word in a sentence? Someone.
To show that you understand it.
Show that you understand it. How do you translate that into mathematics? You do a word problem. So the more problems you solve, what happens? It shows that you understand it, correct?
Right.
Okay. So that's what we'll do. I will find some word problems. I will find some word problems. I will get them to whomever would like the word problems. And then, God willing, next week, unless there's believers that want to do something before next week, I will put together a presentation on how to translate equations into how to take a verbal, what they call a verbal expression, and translate it into an equation, and then how to do it in reverse.
Yes, sir.
And then before next week. like I said, I'm on vacation. I don't mind doing it. You know, this is what I live for. I enjoy this. Just the fact of hearing Sister Ania's voice starting to go up a little bit means that are we going back up, Sister Ania, a little bit?
We are, yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay, that's what I live for.
Yes, sir.
And then what happens is this. Here's where things get really interesting. Here's where things get really interesting. Because the more you practice translating verbal statements into equations, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said it like this. He said it in The Time and What Must Be Done, the Great War. And I think I wrote out, let me see, I wrote out the exact statement. Let's see. If I can't find it in my pile of mess here. Here it is. This is the exact statement that he made. Well, let me go with Sister Tina and Sister Shereen first, and then I'll finish what I'm saying. Go ahead, Sister Tina. You're on mute, Sister Tina.
Yes, sir. I was just going to ask you about certain formulas because when I asked my question earlier, I don't think you understood what I was saying. I just wanted certain formulas in solving problems, and that you already gave us. Really, the pi, the formula for pi, the formula for finding distance. That that's
Yeah,
all.
there's formulas for all of that.
Yeah.
There's
Yes,
formulas
sir.
for all of that, and the more see what we do is we'll do what's called the equation clearing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same concept of word clearing, but we just apply it to equations. And what we do is we take an equation, break it down into its components. What are the parts of the equation? It goes back to, remember, Surah 87 verses 1 through 3.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Allah
sir.
creates, then makes complete. He measures and then he guides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that same principle. I call that the 87-13 rule. And that's just how I remember certain ayats in the Holy Quran. I know the 87-13 rule is the Islamic or Quranic cycle of action. Because if Allah creates and then he makes complete, that's start and that's stop. And then to measure and then to guide is how you produce change. And when you measure, you're dealing with the operations of mathematics, but when you guide, you're applying the rules of mathematics. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So you never do any operations without rules, correct?
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay. So to get from the start, which is whatever problem you're given, you want to get to the stop, which is the solution, correct?
Yes.
And in order to get from start to stop or create to make complete, you got to do some work, and the work has to be based on rules, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So I use that ayat with regards to how I understand mathematics. We take an equation, and if you can break down the equation and understand every individual part of that equation, and then you can understand how this part relates to this part, and how do you get this solution based on how this equation works. There's no doubt in my mind, if we have any equation that we're studying, within 10 minutes, we will understand that equation. Why? Because you are the scientist. We are the people of God. All of this is in our DNA already. It's already in our genetic makeup. I'm a firm believer, and this is just me, I'm going off on a tangent right now, but I'm a firm believer that just like the devil can implant engrams in us, even in from a prenatal standpoint. And even though prenatally, we don't understand the language of English, but the sound of what was said is connected with the emotion of what was said, and that lies dormant in us, correct? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then at a certain time, after we learn language, when we hear that statement made, the statement that is made that is now understood because we understand English is keyed in, because what was said now that we understand is connected to what we have recorded that's connected with the emotion. That's what keys in the engram. Does that make sense?
Oh,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm a firm believer. This is just me. If we're told in the scripture, and Minister Farrakhan has made this statement many times, he says, before we're in the wombs of our mother, I knew you. Doesn't he say that?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that just as an engram can be placed in us in utero, is it possible that high levels of mathematics, physics, science, and chemistry was implanted in us before we were in utero?
Yes, sir.
Which means if we begin to study mathematics and science, because mathematics and science is a language that we don't know at this moment in time, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
But there's something that's in us, and it's happened to some of us, when certain mathematical terms or concepts are brought to the forefront. Has it not triggered a new thought or something new? We can't quite put our finger on it, but we say there's something about this that just caused some case gain.
Yes, sir.
Does that happen to
Yes,
anyone?
sir.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm a firm believer that the wisdom of the universe is already encoded in our DNA, but we have to key in, let's say this is a engram on a positive level. In order to key in the ancient wisdom that's in us, we have to begin to study mathematics, physics, and science. And I think that, and I believe with my whole heart, that as we study mathematics and science, it's going to key in some dormant, I don't want to use the word engram because the word engram is always used in a negative context, but it's going to key in some high level wisdom that's already encoded in us. By going through the problem book, what are we doing? We're really, I'm seeing a problem book as a type of mathematical processing to reawaken the mind of a scientist that's already dormant, that's in us, that has to be keyed in. And then as we study, what happens? It becomes locked.
Mhm.
But instead of being aberrated, we become a scientist. So let's say
that
scientist is the opposite of aberrated. Can we say that?
Yes.
What?
Someone just said, what if? What if what? Was that you,
No,
Sister
no.
Tina?
I was saying, what is the opposite of aberrated? What was that word?
I said scientist.
Oh, scientist. So is that revived? We become revived?
Yeah, we could say that. We could say that.
Mhm.
I believe all the wisdom of the universe is already in us. And here's another statement I'll make. And this is based on a statement I saw someone make on Facebook. And I had made a statement about 20-year period and what we were to learn during that 20-year period. And he responded by saying it's a period where we'll be taught directly by the scientists. And he made it seem as though we're all going to be in the classroom. There's going to be a scientist up on the dry erase board, and we're going to be behind these desks with a scientist. And my mind said that doesn't make any sense.
No, no. Mm-mm.
Because if the circle is 24, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Where would we all have to go to be in a classroom with a scientist? I don't think it's going to happen that way. This is just my opinion. My belief is this. In order for us to be in a classroom, don't we have to first make forth the effort to learn science? Don't we have to make forth the effort to learn physics and mathematics? Would that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so we have to place ourselves in a classroom in order for a scientist to teach us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
My thought is this. those of us that put forth the effort to learn different aspects of mathematics and science based on, some of us might want to study the science of agriculture. Some might want to study the science of, like Sister Zakia, she's not here now, but she wanted to learn forensics. Whatever our desire is to learn, okay, is it possible that the classroom could be our own home, our own mind? And if the scientists have the ability to tap into someone's consciousness, is it possible that as we study in our own home and in our own mind, if we're learning new information, new data, could we say that there's a possibility that we're being taught by one of the scientists?
Yes.
It's just something to think about.
Yes.
So I don't think we're all going to be in the classroom, 30 million original people, and you got 24 scientists. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But I believe.
I mean, I would.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm on my phone, so I don't have my computer to put my hand up and stuff.
Okay,
but
go ahead.
As you were talking, I'm thinking that our classroom is the universe.
Yes.
Like you said, our personal space, but also the wider universe. And the universe speaks to us if we would only pay attention and listen and learn. So the willingness definitely needs to be there. And you're helping us with the math and seeing that the spiritual and the math and the universe is all talking to us. And we just have to be aware. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Here's how the minister said it. He says, and this is a quote, "See, he told me that Allah is a scientist, the Mahdi. He don't use a lot of words. He speaks like a scientist in formulae. But he was the second scientist." He's referring to the Most High Elijah Muhammad. "He looks into the formula of the first scientist and breaks it down." Okay, so now you have the Savior speaks in the language of formula. What is the formula? Formula is a collection of symbols, numbers, and letters that is a physical representation of the unseen forces that exist in the universe. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the Savior, he says, speaks in the language of formulae. He says the Savior don't use a lot of words. The second scientist, the Most High Elijah Muhammad, looks into the formulae and breaks it down. Then he says a whole list of things here. He said, "But a man was made for him by Allah." Now he's referring to himself. That could feed directly from the generator, break it down, the complex truths, so that even a fool will find it hard to make a mistake. So now here you have three men, three scientists. First scientist speaks in the language of formulae. Second scientist looks into the formulae, breaks it down. The third scientist comes and breaks it down even further into the complex truths. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So by us studying what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has given us, and by studying what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is giving us, we are understanding how to understand the language of formulae. Now, this is why I'm saying what I'm saying. As you understand how to take an expression and convert it into an equation, you can begin to take the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and you can translate his words into equations. And then what will happen is, if you take his words, this is just what I do. I'm not saying everyone should do this, but this is how I see it. And this gives me a deeper appreciation for what the minister has given us. There's different, what he says is like a fundamental, and then there's layers of wisdom in the words. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Y'all with me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And if you take a statement that the minister has given and you break down his words into formulae, if you apply what's called, we understand what's called the law of substitution, correct?
Yes, sir.
Then you begin to see the minister's words are formula that will lead you into other truths. In mathematics, when you take a function or equation and you break it down, that's called finding the derivative. Okay. That level of math is called differentiation. And it just so happens that the Arabic word for differentiation is furqan. Take an equation and you're able to extract information which applies to past, present, and future. That's a level of calculus, but it's called differentiation. But the Arabic word is furqan, the discrimination. Okay, the discrimination and differentiation is the same thing. In mathematics, that's called the prime derivative. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So when you have what's called a prime derivative, then you also have what's called a secondary derivative. Who is the secondary derivative? That's you and I. Because the minister has broken down the complex truths of the Most High Elijah Muhammad. And I believe our job is to take what he has given us even further. As he has taken the wisdom and put it in the fine language that he knows, he's taken a universal message. So he's like one of the apostles that speaks to the masses, and it says that every person heard him speak in their own language. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes,
So
sir.
when I hear the minister speak, sometimes I hear physics, sometimes I hear mathematics, because those are the language that resonate with my spirit. Other people might hear different things. We hear different things based on our frequency. Why? Because his word is like a fundamental, but there's layers of wisdom in the minister's words. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But we
Yes,
have
sir.
to find out what our language, our frequency is. And then now we can put it in the language that we know. And then in calculus, you get the derivative, but you're able to trace it back to what's called the function. Everything the minister teaches, can you trace it back to what the Most High Elijah Muhammad taught?
Yes, sir.
So then automatically you can trace it back to what the Savior taught, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So if we take what the minister is teaching and we can take that and go a little bit further with it, then if you look at Brother Nori, Sister Ava, you look at all those great teachers, they don't all teach the same, do they?
No, sir.
But you can tell they drink from the same well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So all I'm saying is all of us have our own, in 14th chapter of Revelation, it says that there was a group of people that were on Mount Zion with the Lamb, and they were singing a new song.
Mm-hmm.
And the minister says, I think it's hard trials are necessary to establish the truth. He says, but no one taught you what the song was. We all have to find our own song. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And we'll be able to trace it back. When someone says, where'd you get that from? You can say, well, the minister said X, Y, and Z. We can trace it back to the minister. And if you can trace it back to the minister, then by what's called the transitive law, if A equals B and B equals C, then A has to equal C. If I can trace it back to the minister, and the minister can trace it back to the Most High Elijah Muhammad, right? Elijah Muhammad traces it back to the Savior. That means as long as I stay with the minister, then who else am I connected to?
Messenger in our life.
You have to be.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when we study
Yes.
the mathematics, what are we doing? It's like we are priming our mind to understand formulae. But then you can take that and apply it in so many different ways. Did anyone ever think about applying formulae to auditing?
No, honestly, no.
Mhm.
But it works. I mean, it
But it
works.
works.
So
It
it
works.
works. It works.
It works. Sister Tina, do you have something else?
No, sir. I was just trying to see how, if my question was answered, and it, you know, in some ways it was
About the equations?
about formula, because the reason I asked is exactly because of what you just said about how the scientists, or the God, the minister, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad speaks in formula.
Mhm.
And so it just, today's class just made me become more interested in formulas and how that can help me to better see the problem book and see myself. So I just wanted particular formulas, and particular formulas like pi and the things that you gave us before.
Oh, there's
Different
oh
formulas.
God, there's hundreds of
And
formula.
right, that's what I'm getting out of what you're saying. So when you said that you developed your own formula with chapter 87 verses 1 through 3, right?
Mhm.
So
The
we
Holy
can,
Quran is a book of formula.
the Holy Quran is a book of formula. And so when you was saying how you used the minister as an example, it just makes me see, because it's so many different formulas, like you said, we
Oh,
can
Lord.
develop our own formulas to solve our own problems.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes.
Because just keep this in mind, whatever problem we have, that problem is composed of elements. It's composed, it has to be composed of parts. Okay. And if we can identify each part of the problem, those are the variables. So now I'm not looking at just one problem. I'm looking at, okay, this is a problem, but it's based on this, this, and this. Once you start to break the problem down, you can now pinpoint, oh, this is the situation right here. You can pinpoint, because once you get the components and you see the relationship, now you know why this produces this. Our problems are based on outputs or outcomes that are undesirable, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, sir. So if we had 4 parts, like you said in the equation earlier, you have 4 parts to that problem. So if there's um, 4 parts to a problem that I have to have at least 3 of the answers to solve the problem.
That's how it
Okay.
works in algebra. Now you can take that same concept and, well, if you look at it from the perspective of the different dynamics, same thing occurs. So the different parts of our life where there's problems, that problem boils down to a formula or an equation that we haven't solved yet.
Oh, so you mentioned the 8 dynamics. So looking at the 8 dynamics, look at what problems I have in the 8 dynamics to solve my problem overall.
What dynamic is it in? Is it dynamic 2? Is it dynamic 3? Okay, so now you have a starting point. Each dynamic has, you can take one equation, and that one equation you can use in any one of the dynamics. Because, okay, if you look at the third dynamic, the problem in that dynamic is either going to be a person, a place, something that occurred, or something that was said. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Can't you apply that same thing to all dynamics?
Yes, sir.
Let's look at the sixth dynamic. The sixth dynamic is what they call the animal. No, that is the MEST. That's the matter, energy, space, and time. So let's look at that dynamic for just a split second. A person, a statement, a place, or an event. Now, why do we have problems on the sixth dynamic? And L. Ron Hubbard said this is where the biggest problem is. If you look back at our history with regard, now if you're dealing with matter, energy, space, and time, you're dealing with mathematics, physics, chemistry, and all those things, correct?
Yes.
Can you go back to a place on the time track where you had a problem with mathematics, physics, or chemistry?
Yes.
Can you see the classroom?
Yes.
Can you see the teacher?
Yes.
Can you remember what was said?
No.
See, and but you're able to go back in the time track, right?
Yes.
You can apply that same principle to any one of the dynamics, and then through processing, we can get that stuff out. Our aberration is rooted in the areas of those dynamics.
Okay.
Remember, today's word is what? What's today's word?
Conundrum.
Conundrum. Today's word is conundrum.
So those 4 words you mentioned earlier was person, statement, place, and you said another one.
Well, when you deal with an engram, you have a moment of unconsciousness that's caused by an injury. That injury took place at a location, and there was a statement made by a person. These are like the variables of the equation.
Okay.
And the goal is you're trying to really get to the person in the statement.
Okay.
And that's what you're shooting for when you're dealing with an occluded case. You're trying to get those perceptics, but the goal is to find the person in the statement, because it's the whispering of the slinking devil that's keeping us in our conundrum.
Okay. Yes, sir.
But the beauty of it is you can learn one equation, but you can apply it on any of the 8 dynamics. You don't have to learn 8 different formula. And that's the beauty of the formula. Once you understand the formula, that is a rule that applies on all the levels. So you don't have to learn 8 different rules for 8 different dynamics. You learn a formula, and then you can apply it based on the data that's in that dynamic.
Right.
But to understand equations and formula, you understand that when you get to algebra, there's a whole lot of formula.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
then
sir.
when you get to geometry, there's more formula. You get to what's called math analysis. This is when you start getting into what's called the coordinate system. More equations, more formula. Okay.
Okay. So
Same for
formulas.
operations. The operations don't change. But
So it took what, mathematical scientists to come up with these particular formulas? You know, they came up with formulas. Somebody came up with the formulas.
Well, basically what it boils down to is in observing or striving to observe different events that take place in the universe, there is a way to understand the phenomena through the language of symbols or mathematics. What that means is, if I'm given a certain piece of data, I should be able to predict the outcome. And when you can have a start and you can predict what the outcome is going to be, that means that equation is sound on one level. Your equation is sound. What you're doing is you're translating the unseen forces of the universe and understanding through the language of mathematics. Does that make sense?
I just started picturing something when you said what you said. So if my bathroom needs cleaning, let's say my bathroom needs cleaning, and if I don't clean it, the outcome is it stays the same.
Right.
It stays not unclean. So
now what are all the variables you need You start out with a bathroom that is crazy looking. You have clean. What are all the variables that you need to get from start to stop?
Action I need to do with it.
You need to do some work. Okay. So then what happens is this. You need cleaning tools. You need cleanser. And the mystery God ain't gonna do it. So someone's got to do it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So now once you have all the, so remember, create, then complete, measure, and then guide. So now measure is work has to be done. Guide tells us it has to be done in a certain order. So there's certain things you're going to do before you do certain other things. There's a certain method. There's a Sister Tina, there's a PEMDAS to everything. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you got that one, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
There's
sir.
a PEMDAS for everything. When you go and clean the bathroom, isn't there a certain order in which you clean it?
Yes, sir.
There's a certain order in which you're going to clean. I'm just plugging in my. Okay. When if you're cleaning the car, there's a certain way you do it, correct?
Yes.
If you're cleaning the refrigerator, isn't there an algorithm that you follow?
Yes.
You don't just keep all the food inside and then just spray the spray and wipe down everything with the food still in there, right?
You're right.
Take all the food out, you throw away what needs to be thrown away, you clean it out, put everything back in. Well, there's a PEMDAS for everything.
Right.
Okay. Now, each one might have their own PEMDAS. So that's a sticky note. So does that make sense, Sister Tina?
Oh, yes, sir. It does. It does. Thank you. Now I got it. I'm good now.
So a lot of times the confusion in our life is not based on the fact that we're ignorant. We're very intelligent. It's just that we haven't taken the time just to slow down. Okay, let me look at all the steps necessary to do this. And let me just do it one step at a time. I got to clean the fridge. Okay, first thing I do is let me remove everything from the fridge. And while I'm doing that, let me look at the expiration dates. This salad dressing has been here since October of 2022. I've got to throw that away. Okay, so now you eliminate certain things. Everything's out. That's step one. That's the start. Then you have the change. Cleanse, wipe down, whatever you got to do. And then the stop would be everything is back in the fridge, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The whole process is there's a start, change, and stop for everything. There's a step-by-step process for everything. We just have to slow down our thought. One of my biggest problems is I'll start something over here, then I'll start something over here, then I'll start something over here. And I start so many different things and I get sidetracked. I got all these things I started and I didn't complete anything. Yeah, Sister Shireen's laughing at me. But I'm the startup king. I would, if I could stop everything I start, I'd be pretty good. But it's a process. Go ahead, Sister Shireen.
Oh my gosh, I'm just writing so much. But I was gonna say something back about the in is over us of equals n over. That's the same thing as part over whole equals x over 100, right?
Yes, I do remember seeing part over whole equals x over 100. Yes,
Okay.
I do remember seeing that one.
All right, I was just checking that. And then when you was just talking about the PEMDAS for everything and the problem and the outcomes, I was thinking about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and in the Bible, it says anger not. And Prophet Muhammad said, do not become angry. But in the Proverbs, it also says, don't become angry. And I was thinking that anger keeps us from thinking, because it gets us all in our emotions, and then we forget the process, and then we start skipping around. And even like with starting things and then stopping, I get angry, you know, because maybe I let something go too far, and now it's this big giant massive thing that has to be chipped away at. But if I just compose my emotions and don't get caught up in the moment of really it is insanity, temporary insanity. But if I can just go back to the PEMDAS part of it and pinpoint, okay, where did I get stuck? What caused me to jump to something else? Why did I stop? Then that helps me to move forward. But if I get angry, then I don't give myself the grace. I become judgmental even of myself. And then it just makes me go into that dog chasing his tail spin, and it doesn't stop. But if I just look at all the areas where there's either a stack. Why do I have all these stacks of books and papers and stuff? Is because I know some of it is important, but it's not important for what I have to do at this minute, but I don't want to misplace it. And then I can't find it. But if I know it's in that stack or that stack or that stack, I have a clue of where to begin. So anyway, that's just me trying to unscramble my mind. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Very welcome. Sister Ani, I did see your hand up there for a split second.
Yes, sir. Before I say what I was going to say, can I just ask again? The sister mentioned part over whole equals, and then what was the rest of it?
And over 100.
Okay. Part over whole. Okay, all right, so maybe we can come back to that one. Or no, or maybe when you say part over whole, can you give a little bit more clarification on that one?
Sure. If we're looking at, if I'm saying 3 is, well, let's use a different one. If I say 5 is what percent of 10? Okay. What I'm saying is the whole, the entire number that I'm dealing with is 10. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay, so the 10 is that's the entirety of what I'm looking at. So what part is 5 with regards to 10? So part over whole. So 5 over 10 is equal to what percent? And that's the n over 100. Okay. So then if you do 5 over 10 is n over 100, then you cross multiply, you're doing 5 times 100, correct?
Okay.
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 So it's really the same thing. It's just I remember seeing the formula like that, but me personally, I like the is over of, because a lot of times, but you might have, and again, I'll come up with some word problems. So my goal is this: God willing, the next math session we do, we're going to go through translating something verbally into an equation. I'm going to give, I'm going to give you the assignment right now. There's 4 words that I want you to clear. Okay, now when I say clear, you remember word noise? You remember word noise, that mnemonic device we used?
Yes, but not fully.
Okay, so here,
I know you gave
when you
us
do your
word
word
noise.
clearing, this is what I want you to do. The W stands for the word. So that's the word that you're going to clear. Okay. O in word. O means operation, meaning, or operator, meaning, is this word a noun? Is it a pronoun? Is it a verb? Is it an adverb? Okay. The letter R stands for root. What is the root word? The D in the mnemonic device for word noise, the D stands for definition. Okay. The letter N stands for any special notes about the word. For example, I can't remember which word it was, but I looked it up and it just so happened that word was first used in 1877. What's the significance of that date? We all know. Certain words will have certain notes, certain history connected to them. Okay, so W-O-R-D-N-O. So now the O stands for other definitions. So when you first clear a word, you want the definition that is in the context of the word that you're using. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You might have other definitions that are not what you're looking for, but you start out with, okay, this is the definition. This is specifically in the context of what I'm looking for. Okay. So N stands for notes. O stands for those other definitions. Those are important because other definitions is like putting fertilizer in your brain, meaning it's going to open new avenues of thought. Okay. I stands for idioms. Do we all know what an idiom is? Anyone not know what an idiom is? I-D-I-O-M. An idiom is a phrase that if you clear the phrase, if you clear the words in the phrase, they're not in any way connected to what the phrase means. For example, if I say kick the bucket, you can clear the word kick, you can clear the word bucket, but you won't come to the output of it means to die. Does that make sense?
Right.
Okay, so kick the bucket is a statement. When you clear the words, it's not going to give you the meaning of the statement. So you have N-O-I-S stands for synonyms. Okay, so look for your synonyms, look for your antonyms. Someone's alarm's going off?
No, my phone, sir. Let me go on mute.
Okay, I thought that was the brother Luke Mine you're talking too long alarm.
No.
And E is something I'll go over at another time, but E stands for the elements of a word, your prefix, your root word, and your suffix. Okay. So when you do your word clearing of these 4 words, the 4 words are addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. The focus of those 4 words, when you clear the word for addition, I want you to pay special attention to the synonyms. Same thing for multiplication. Pay close attention to the synonyms. And I can almost guarantee if you just clear those 4 words and you pay close attention to the synonyms, when we go over the word problems next week, they'll be even easier to understand now that you've cleared those words. And what would be the additional result of that? I'm going to try to see if I can find either some ayats from the Holy Quran or statements made by the minister and see if we can translate the ayats or translate the minister's words into an equation. That's something they ain't going to teach in school.
Yes, sir.
Because then we'll be able to see how the minister's words, there's more to what he's saying. There's, do you remember Contact with Jodie Foster? Sister Anya, you ever see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Definitely.
Remember they got the message came in the form of prime numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Then they had the message, but layered in the message was the video. But then layered in the video were the blueprints to make that ship that they made. You remember what I'm talking about?
Right.
That's how the teachings are.
Mm-hmm.
There's wisdom layered within the wisdom.
Right, right. Yes, sir. Okay, second point of 3. Okay, when you said ratio, something, and percents.
Proportions.
Proportions.
Yeah, ratio, proportions, and percents. I put those 3 together because I remember learning those 3 as one. When I remember teaching the GED mathematics, they put those 3 together in one area: ratios, proportions, and percents.
Okay. All right. And okay, so what I had raised my hand for was the method that you use and the method that the minister uses with us is that he gives us permission to ask the question, to express our thoughts, and not being not fearing censure from expressing our point of view. We're to the point where he says there are no right or wrong answers. So sometimes we make statements and we are totally wrong, but we're not handled in the manner as if we're totally wrong. We're encouraged to make our point regardless. And so that in itself is a formula being used to awaken within us that quality of being a scientist. Because the scientist has, among other things, but to me, one of the main, some of the main key points of the nature of a scientist is, number one is curiosity and creativity and persistence and objectivity is like not being afraid to explore a thing from any angle. And once you see something in it, go down that avenue, explore it all the way to the very bottom or to the very top, inside and out, so that you know all the ways that it will work and all the ways that it won't work. That's the nature of a scientist. Let's just see anyway. You can tell me it's wrong, but let's just see anyway. Let's prove if it is wrong. Let's show how we can prove that it's wrong. You know, that's what the scientist wants to do. And that is the nature of inquisitiveness of a child. And Jesus says in Matthew 18:3, this is the truth, unless you change and become like a child, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So if we don't become inquisitive and curious like little children, then we'll never develop this godlike mind, because the God is not afraid to ask questions. The God is not afraid to explore. And even in the study group, you know, again, the minute we're told that these instructions come down from the minister, for us to express our thoughts. And so now the study groups are really, really growing and becoming much more potent, because everyone now is no longer scared to express their thought with the thought in mind that somebody's going to shut you down if you give the wrong answer or make the wrong statement. We're learning now how to, even if everybody in the group thinks or believes that the person has made an incorrect statement, we're learning how to handle those situations in a way where it doesn't cause the person to shrink down or clam up because everybody now thinks that you're wrong. We're gently guided to see, what's eye-opening about the statement they made, and gently guided into, the part where you're wrong is not so directly addressed as to make you want to shut down. You're just gently guided to see things in a more expanded fashion, which includes a more correct view. So we're learning how to handle each other that way. And so when you said that we all have to find our own song, we're learning that everybody's input is relative to the subject at hand. And we all bring our own expression of Allah's truth, which all leads to help to understand the formula or the formulae. And I'm reminded of Ramanujan's quote, when he said that an equation means nothing to me unless it expresses a thought of God.
One of my favorite quotes.
Yes, one of mine too. So that was it. That was all.
What you have just said actually comes out of some of the advanced tech L. Ron Hubbard talks about. So you're right on point. You're right on point. He says one of the things that he doesn't use the word scientist. He says one of the things that an individual should do is not only try to prove their statement right. He says you should also try to see if you can prove your statement to be wrong. And in the science of logic, that's called proof by contradiction. So one way to prove something is try to prove the opposite. And if something is true, if something is true, you can't prove the opposite. If something is false, you'll actually prove the contradiction, which means you've proved it to be false because you've proved what is true. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So what you're saying is right on point. Now, here's the last thing. Here's a little exercise I want all of us to do. Draw a circle. If you have a piece of paper, just draw a circle. Put a point at the center of that circle. Okay. Everyone got that done?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you draw a line from that point to the circle, that's called your radius, correct? Okay. And if you draw from that point in the opposite direction, now you have what's called the diameter, correct? Now let's say that you are the point that's at the center of that circle. And let's say everything in the circumference represents what you know. Does that make sense? Now, if everything inside that circle represents what you know, first question is, do you know everything?
No. No.
Okay. Huh? Sis Anya?
You don't know everything, but if the circle represents everything that I know, then I know everything that's inside that circle.
Okay, you know inside that circle. Now, if you know that you don't know everything, that means everything inside the circle is what you know, and everything outside the circle is what?
You don't know.
Not known.
Okay?
Mhm.
So the question is, how do you figure out what's outside the circle?
Mm,
You have to ask questions about stuff that you don't know.
exactly. And that's increasing your
Go ahead.
That's what the minister's talking. That's what the minister's talking about. So you have to increase your diameter so that you get. So that's how you know more.
It increases the circumference of your activity, right?
Right.
So if you don't know about something outside the circle, trying to formulate a question about something you don't know sometimes might sound crazy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But how else will you got to first figure out how to ask the question about what you don't know. And a teacher that shouldn't be teaching will be saying, don't ask questions like that. Because the teacher don't know.
Yeah.
But how else can you expand the diameter of your thinking unless you ask about stuff that's unknown? Because asking about things that are unknown causes everyone to do what? You got to think on a whole other level now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I always say, ask questions. Because there are times when you ask questions, I'm like, man, that's a deep question right there. Because I'll say to myself, like, damn, I never thought about that one. And then what do I do? That's my assignment. Why? Because I'm trying to expand the diameter of my thinking. Oh, sister, you put that in there. Yeah. Srinivasa Ramanujan. If anyone would like a demo kit on Ramanujan, there's a movie called The Man Who Knew Infinity. Great movie.
I saw that.
Yes, great movie. Great movie. Yeah. And the beauty of it is a lot of the mathematical concepts he got while he was in making prayer. He got it through meditation and praying.
Wow.
So yes, Sister Anna, you're right on point. You have to ask questions that have never been asked. And again, it reminds me, and this is my last statement. Brother Salam has this message on his phone, and it says, in order to get what you never got, you got to do what you never done. So in order to get new information, you have to what? You have to ask new questions. And that's why the educational system in this world doesn't work, because they give you the information, parakeet only what I've asked you. Don't give us nothing new. Don't come up with your own ideas. Don't think independently. Just parakeet it. And what happens is you have certain students that think beyond the mind of the teacher, and that causes an arrogant teacher to now want to flex. You know, I'm the one with the degree. You don't teach me nothing. Well, you don't need to be teaching. How about that? Because last time I checked, that even the minister will sit and listen to other individuals, and he learns from everyone. If he can do that, and he's, one of three in the universe, and if he can learn, then any one of us can learn. Go ahead, Sister Shireen.
Another movie that helped me see things a little bit differently about math was Jingle Jangle. That it's like a Christmas movie. It's on Netflix, but one of the songs is "It's So Possible," and one of the lyrics is "The square root of impossible is me."
I like that. I like that.
And it says, "Watch me become who I'm supposed to be, because the square root of impossible is me."
I like that.
But it's a little girl sings it, but it is what's his name is in it? Forrest Whitaker, and but it's a powerful movie. It's a very powerful movie outside of it, being a Christmas movie, but it is very powerful. And then when is the math class? When is the next math class? You keep saying the next math class. When is that?
I'm gonna schedule it for the 9th, which is next Wednesday. if I can get this completed beforehand, then what I'll do is I'll send out, and whoever can make it, that's fine. And if you can't, then we'll just do it on the 9th anyway. But I'll try to do something before the 9th. Like I said, I don't go back to work till the 23rd. So I'm gonna be sitting at my desk, praying, meditating, trying to fast, trying to kill this sugar demon, this whispering, slinking sugar devil I got in my ear. I'm trying to get all that done in the next month. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
last thought, has anyone seen They Clone Tyrone yet?
No, but I heard it's good.
I won't spoil it, but boy. No, there's
Okay.
no such thing as a bean pie demon. There's no such thing. No such thing. No such thing as a bean pie demon. That's an oxymoron. That's an oxymoron.
It's a movie called They Clone Tyrone.
They Clone Tyrone. It just came out. I watched it. Yeah, I heard someone else say that there's a lot. What are you about to say, Sister Peggy?
I'm sorry. It just dawned on me which movie that's the one that has Jamie Foxx, right?
Yes.
And that's why when he told the public what was going on, people were saying that he was a clone.
Yeah. But the thing is, that movie, they dropped so much stuff in that movie. Specifically at the very end, I was amazed that they showed what they showed at the end of that movie. Oh my goodness.
It's on Netflix.
It's either on Netflix or it's on Amazon. I can't remember.
Netflix.
Netflix.
So it's worth watching.
I would. A movie has to be very good for me to watch it twice. Okay. Now, The Matrix, if I had $1 for every time I've seen that, I'd probably be wealthy. I would watch that movie a second time just to catch the stuff I missed the first time. But when you see the final scene at the end, it's in a room, and I'm not going to tell you nothing else. It's just a room, and there's a dialogue. Listen to the dialogue and notice what you see in the background, and your jaw is going to hit the floor. And you'll be like, am I seeing what I'm seeing?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
is it scary?
No. It's not scary at all. This movie has so many hidden messages in it.
And is it gruesome?
No, it's not gruesome. It's not gruesome. There's a little bit of blood, but it's not no gruesome blood. It's just, it's surface. But then again, I worked as a medic. I've seen severed limbs before. That stuff doesn't bother me. But no, this movie is not gruesome. But the message will blow you away. And the very last scene, I couldn't believe that they showed what they showed. I'm like, man, if they didn't take this from the supreme wisdom and the teaching of Most High Elijah Muhammad, this is a demo kit for the teaching. I'll put it that way.
Wow.
This is a demo kit for a message to the Black man. Unbelievable what they did in this movie. When Mother Tenet Muhammad said the scientists are putting the wisdom in the movies, you might get discouraged at the very beginning. It's almost like they talk about the black exploitation movies. It's almost like that. But I'm telling you, watch the whole movie. Other people might say this, that, and the other about the movie. That was a demo kit for Message to the Black Man in the teachings.
Wow. Okay.
And when you see that last scene, your jaw's gonna hit the floor. Like, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Yeah, you're seeing it. Sister Peggy.
Are you still talking about They Clone Tyrone?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you can't see it at the movie, right?
I think it's in the movie. It could be in the movies.
Like in the movie theater.
Yeah, you can see
it's
it in the
on
movie
Netflix.
theater.
It's
I think
on
it's in the movie
Netflix.
theater.
It is?
I'll
I
check.
think so.
I know it's on Netflix.
Then it must have hit the movie theater and
then
Or maybe it was never made for the movie theater. Or maybe
Because
it
I-
stayed
I
in the
don't,
movie.
I don't think it was in the movies. I think it went straight to Netflix.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
they disclose too much information in that movie. I'm telling you. I'll watch that again.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I can.
I will watch that again. That was incredible. But God willing, next time we get together, translating verbal expressions into equations, and then we are going to see if we can take some of the statements made by the minister or something from the problem book and convert it and actually calculate it and see if we can extract some more data.
Okay.
And there might be, there's one thing specifically I'll share with the believers of what I found. I applied that rule to something I was studying, and it totally just took my mind to a whole nother level. So my goal is to share whatever I get blessed to see, share with the believers so we can all use it. So God willing, next Wednesday, if not sooner, we'll handle that. Inshallah, we will have our regular meeting on Sunday. Perhaps we might start it on Sunday, because I know we're going to need more than a part one. We can do a part one on Sunday and perhaps a part two on Wednesday. We'll see what happens though. So
All right, sir.
thank you for your patience. Forgive me for keeping us so long. I lose track of time. I just get so happy being around the believers and talking about topics that are high in the tone scale. And if the believers have any questions, any thoughts or anything, please send me an email and give me all the assignments that you want. I don't mind doing the assignments. With that being said and done, let us go ahead and get ready to close out in prayer. Anyone have any
Yes, sir.
last statements before we close out? Okay. Attention prayer. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Satan. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment, which we now live. The alone we serve, and aid do we seek. Please, Allah, guide us on the straight path, the path upon whom Thou hast bestowed favors, not the path upon whom Thy wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray if they've heard Thy teaching. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum, family.
Walaikum salam, sir.
Walaikum
Walaikum salam,
salam.
family. Have a
Thank
blessed day.
you.
Walaikum salam.
Walaikum salam,
Thank
family.
you, thank you,
Everyone.
thank you so
Blessings.
much.
Oh, thank you, family.